When we were right here, I also, oh man. Well, that was smooth. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate you guys coming back every week to see if I've gotten a little bit better with my video editing. Today we're drinking hot tea with a slice of lemon, lavender, and Earl Grey. My girlfriend Mike gave me so much crap about my K-cup and my Keurig machine from last week, but that tells me that he's at least watching my videos. Ooh, hot again. At the end of this, don't forget to give me a thumbs up, like the video, and subscribe. Maybe even click that bell if you want to see any more quirky videos that I've got coming out. I'm hoping by the time that you guys watch this that you will be watching me in a tiny little corner of the video and you actually seeing the slide of the Port of Puerto Rico. I promised you I would show you the highlights from that port. Let's go ahead and let's try it out. I think it'll turn out pretty cool, but you guys gotta let me know whenever we got to Puerto Rico that we were just going to do a walking tour and walk to the different castles and along the coastline and then back to the ship. We went to Castillo San Cristobal and then we walked along the sea line to the Castillo del Morro. After that, we continued to walk along the coastline to the Paseo de la Princesa and back to the ship. So it was just one giant loop. If you're looking at Google Maps and you're plotting each spot, it showed a 58-minute walk. So if you were to get directly off the ship and do that giant loop, it takes you about an hour. After we got back to the ship and got settled a little bit, I was able to go to the top and film the sail away. So I've sped up most of the sail away until you get right to the end of the island in Old San Juan. That's where the Castillo del Morro is, and it is just beautiful. So that end piece is real time. You'll be able to soak that in and maybe even picture yourself smelling that salt air. Of course, I wanted to show you the sun on the bow of the ship. As you can see, after you get off the ship, it's a pretty direct route to get to the first castle. And then once you're finished with the castle, you can see it's pretty easy to just come right back out and you're going to follow the sea line all the way down, all again within walking distance, but take into consideration that if you have any kind of limitations that you might want to take a walking aid. You do see me in some of these pictures. It's really to give you an idea of how steep the stairs are, as well as the accessibility. After getting off the ship, in these pictures you can see us passing by different shops and stores and the green lush area, the beautiful colors on the different buildings, and you see the castle kind of back and to the right. Once you start getting closer to the castle, it does start getting a little bit more steep, so definitely take that into consideration. And these castles were built in the 16th century and they've lasted a pretty long time, and they play an important role in American history. Maybe you're not a history buff, but you like taking in the sights. I encourage you to do an excursion like this and do a walkabout. Once you get up to the top of that castle, you can look down to your right and you can see the ship still at the port, which is pretty cool and pretty comforting if any of you out there are kind of unsure on your own without a guided tour. Now, these castles are managed by the Parks and Recreation. You are going to have to pay a fee to get in. I believe we paid about $15 for both castles per person. So walking in, it's very open. We went over to the right and you're able to see those buildings that we passed coming up to the castle, just beautiful colors, and you can see the ship again in the background. And panning back into the castle, you can see the open area. So after the open area, going through and exploring the castle a little bit more, you can see me in the photo how I'm going up a pretty steep ramp. After you go up that steep ramp, you'll see another open area. There's old ammunition, there are old cannons there, and very thick walls to kind of keep that fortress stable, and the breathtaking views. Now, mind you, this was a little bit early in the morning. The temperature was maybe mid-70s. It is very humid there. And make sure you're taking water. Definitely put on your sunscreen. There was a lookout point where you could see over into the ocean, and then also still see the cruise ship. One of those lookout ports, to me, kind of looks like an AT-AT. It looks very Star Wars. That last lookout point gave the soldiers an advantage. They had the higher ground so they can see any enemies that may have been coming close to the fort. Continuing on with the tour of the castle, there were different walkways and beautiful architecture. There were drawings of ships, that were on the walls, and kind of shocked that they didn't have them covered and safeguarded from anybody touching them. After walking through the top part of the castle, there was an exit that opened up to a grass field, and then an additional set of stairs that went down one flight with more of the exhibit before we completely exited the castle. When we walked through this part of the museum, on display was an old set of armor, letters, they call them the Spanish-American War telegrams. Take the time to look at these different artifacts and replicas. After walking through this part of the museum and exiting, we went to the right up to the seawall so that we could follow that down the street. Probably another 15-20 minute walk to the next castle, and then the next castle is Castillo del Morro. Along the way continued those thick sea walls and lookout points to give the soldiers the advantage of seeing any enemies that may be approaching the island. We stopped to take in the sight and kind of listen to the ocean and smell that salt air. And I do have one oddball picture in here of me touching the grass, and listening to the ocean on the walk is just awesome. At the time of us walking along the seawall, it was starting to get a little bit warmer. We did have bottles of water with us, and we made sure that we had our sunscreen on it because it was pretty hot. Also make sure that you have sunglasses. Continuing on the walk past the seawall were homes. Again, the beautiful, vibrant colors, Spanish architecture. It was just definitely something that I encourage you to see if you have the opportunity. Our walk along the seawall, we came to a cemetery with beautiful mausoleums and people paying their respects to their family. When we got to the beginning of the walkway for the Castillo del Morro, to the left there was a very unique statue that we stopped and we wanted to find out what it was about. When we got close to it, the plaque was in Spanish. My Spanish is very rusty, but what I could gather from the information that was on the plaque was two brothers fighting or struggling. It looked like they were struggling, the good and bad, or you could think heaven and hell. The statues were just beautiful, very detailed. After I embarrassed myself trying to translate the plaque, right across the street from that was the beginning of the walkway to get up to the Castillo del Morro. I have a picture of us at the very beginning of it, and it kind of gives you an idea of how long that walk is. Along the way, there are a couple different statues. You can see a huge recessed area that kind of protects the castle from any kind of intruders. There's also a spot where a soldier could stand guard. And then entering into the main plaza, you've got different options to go in any direction. Moving through the main plaza area, you come to a little tunnel, and there are lookout points. Again, that giant seawall. I have pictures of us in some of these spots so you can kind of gauge and get an idea of how narrow these walkways were. And you can see lookout points really gave the soldiers an advantage to be able to see if there was anybody coming up to the castle. In one part there was cutouts along the floor. I believe that was to help move the cannons from one position to another and ammunition. Along the plaza there were different rooms with plaques inside them giving additional pieces of history. I do have some of those pictures in this clip. How the Castillo del Morro was the gateway to the New World. That is the key to the Caribbean. I highly encourage you, if you haven't seen the movie Amistad with Matthew McConaughey, it's loosely based on the history of Castillo del Morro from the early 1500s. The books that were in there that showed the pieces of history talked about the conflicts. Once you get past the different rooms, there's a section where you can walk down to the lower part of the castle, and along the walk you can see out to the ocean, and the colors were just beautiful. Be very careful whenever you're walking down these steps. They're very narrow. Make sure you've got a buddy with you. Take time to go through each part of the castle to really understand the history. Once we were on the lower level of the Castillo del Morro, there was a spot where we could look over the edge and a walkway. I was not able to find how the end of that walkway got up to the castle. What I wanted to do is walk along the coastline to the other side of the castle. I just couldn't find where the entrance was. Next time we go, I definitely want to do the tour backwards and go along the coastline up to the Castillo del Morro, and then go back to the Castillo San Cristobal, back to the cruise ship. To get out of the castle, you had to go back out the way that you came in. Once we exited the castle, we went to the right, and about this point of our walk, it had started raining. We came up to, you'll see a gate. Spanish dignitaries, how they would come through that gate after their ships were docked. You'll see a group of people that are huddled in that gate area. They were just trying to wait out the rain. We continued walking on that path along the coastline, and along the way there were a couple different parks with different art. And in this area was the Paseo de la Princesa. Beautiful fountains and gorgeous trees. In the same area there were a couple restaurants, cobblestone streets. In this area were statues and a couple different fountains, also plaques to tell you the history. And again, my Spanish was very rusty, but the plaques talked about the different areas being for tourism, and it was mentioned as being magical. People would visit this area for special medicine. It wasn't too much further to get back to the ship. And of course, before we got back onto the ship, we stopped at the Walgreens right across the street and picked up some of that Don Q Cristal rum. Hopefully, whenever we get back to new normal, you'll be able to get off the cruise ship and walk around the port area. This video is coming out. We'll be wrapping up the Harmony of the Seas cruise, looking back at Labadee, Haiti, suite that we stayed in, and also some specialty dining. Until then, don't forget to love that life that you're in and get out there and crush it.